you don't have to stamp to have fun, I've got 8 different ways to elevate your Christmas card designs, and there's not a stamp in sight. My first idea is to use design paper. This is a fabulous way to add pattern and colour to your cards. It's a really easy way to do it. And if you choose a paper pack, then you know that your designs are going to coordinate perfectly. The first card we're going to make has a lot of die cutting, and I'm going to be using the design paper to create the elements for the card. And this is a really fun way to add lots of different colours and also different patterns to your card. Now, I literally just pulled out some cardstocks and some of the pieces to create my snow globe and snowman and trees. And using these papers, I knew that I'm going to get a nice, fun, bright design. I'm using more traditional colours today, not my typical go-to. A little tip here is if you don't have the exact colour that you want, or you don't want to cut different pieces of cardstock, then simply colour your own cardstock with some pencils, markers. I've just used my Copic markers here, and then I've die cut the pieces out. It's a really easy and quick way to do die cutting for smaller layered images. Alright, so I'm going to pop my panel up on the front of the card. So I did actually reinforce it with a second panel, and I want to cut my dome shape from the panel. I am making sure to put my tape on the inside of the die cut so that if it does happen to tear the paper, it won't be tearing the piece of paper that's going to be showing on the outside. I decided to add a pattern in the background with a cover die and just adhered that directly to my card front. Then I can pop up the front panel of the card, and I have used some foam tape to do that. This would be great to actually make a shaker card. I didn't want to do that here today, but this is the perfect design for that. Has that dimension. You don't have to add all of the dimension that I've done here today. You can simply adhere everything directly to the front of the card. I've added some snow to the top of my trees as well. And my second idea here today is I'm not actually going to be adding any sentiment. I'm not sure if you noticed, but the cardstock that I've used on the front panel of the card actually has a sentiment repeated across it as a pattern. And it says Falala, and I'm using that as my sentiment today. There are so many different ways that you can use design paper in your card making, and it's an awesome option when it comes to no stamping. So for my next card, I've decided to use a cover die. Cover dies are a really great way to add an element with some texture or a pattern to your card without any stamping. I've got the tiny dots one here, and you may have noticed I've already used a cover die in the previous card that I've made. So this is a really great way to elevate your card designs without any stamping, because normally you'd want to come in and maybe stamp a background or stamp a pattern. So this is a really good option. I've got the Falala trees here and die cut them out of some green cardstock and some of the design paper as well. You're going to see these colours flowing through all of today's cards. And this die set actually has a coordinating stamp set, but you don't need to use the stamp set. It works really well without the stamped image. You can just use the dies. And when it comes to non-stamped sentiments, one of my go-tos is to die cut a sentiment. And there are so many to choose from now. And if you don't have any, then you could use alpha dies to create your own sentiment, or you could even cut up one of those sentiment sheets that are available. They look great. I've layered mine up here 3 times just to give it a little bit of strength, because I want to actually sit it across the top of the tree and adhere it with some liquid glue. And I've got a bonus idea here for you. Decorate your cards. Embellishments are a great non-stamping way to add something extra special to your card designs. And I've used some coordinating enamel dots today. If you don't have those, the Nuvo dots look, and they're not called dots, they're called drops, look very similar. Or you could use some gems or sequins. So my next idea is to use stencils. So this is a fabulous and very affordable way to get a unique look to your card designs without stamping. So there are lots of different options. There are so many stencils to choose from. Today I've got a falling snow one, and I thought it'd be great to use some texture paste through it. I'm just using the white texture paste, but if you did want to have coloured, you can create your own coloured paste just by adding a few drops of the dye ink refills. One thing to note though is if you are going to be using paste, especially if you're doing multiples of cards, then you do need to allow a good amount of drying time. Stencils are a great option because you can use them to ink blend through, you can layer them up, and when I say layer them up, I mean you can use this stencil and add some ink, and then get a different stencil and add some ink over top. So there are many different options, as well as layering stencils, and we'll get to that in a moment. To decorate this, I thought this would be a really great sort of more masculine design. I've got some black cardstock. I've cut a Santa with his reindeer and also a little city scene. I've cut my panel down. I did make sure it was nice and dry before I ran it through my die cutting machine with one of the A2 layers dies. I just love having rectangle dies. It took me a long time to get them, but now I use them all the time. I don't have to eyeball anything so much. And I'll just use my perfect align tool just to make sure that it was centered exactly on the front of my A2 card. I did forget to add my city before I adhered it to the front of the card, so I went and used my A2 layer die to actually cut that away and then liquid glue to attach it on top. Again, I've got a die cut sentiment here, and I've used that nice bright red color again. So I'm bringing the same colors through all of the cards here. I'm only using the deer here for this card design. Poor little Santa, he got left off the side, but I did actually layer up the reindeer because I knew I wanted to pop them up on the front of the card. My next idea is also very affordable. It's to use embossing folders. Again, there are so many to choose from. This one is actually an image embossing folder. So what I'm doing here, it's actually got a layered stencil, which is what I was talking about before, where I'm actually creating the image by lining up all of the stencils, adding my ink directly through them, and then I can use the coordinating embossing folder. You don't have to get as technical as that. Simply just creating an embossed design for a background. There are some fabulous ones to choose from, and I really like the dimension that it can add to a card, as well as that extra texture. It just gives your cards that real wow factor. Now I've used inks here that I thought would coordinate with the colours from the paper pack and with the papers that I've been using. I will list all of the products that are still available in the description below, but I also have them listed at my blog with lots more information and pictures. To get the 3D embossed look for this particular image, it's as easy as lining up the cardstock with the image in the embossing folder. Now I've got a new Big Shot here, and I have used, this is some 80-pound Nina cardstock, but my Big Shot, this one is quite tight, and I do find sometimes I get some warping in the cardstock or some creases in the cardstock, and I'll show you how to get that looking a little bit better shortly. But look at the dimension there from that folder. It's incredible. This I've cut down a A2 card base to make a square 4 1/4 card. I've also cut down my Wreath image, and I'm adhering that directly to the front with some liquid glue. Again, I've used the design paper here to coordinate with the remaining cards, and I cut my sentiment. And I want to pop that up in the center of the wreath. One way that you can remove creases in cardstock is to use a bone folder. I would recommend using a Teflon one like the one I've got here, because it doesn't leave shine marks on the cardstock, and that can just smooth out some of those crinkles, but I'm not too worried. I also noticed a couple of the berries needed a bit of a touch up, so I just coordinated a pencil over top to make sure that they no longer look cracked. Cracked berries. Who wants cracked berries? So my next idea is to do some hot foiling. This is a fabulous non-stamping technique for your cards, and there are many, many options. I've kept the same color theme here, so I've got a nice bright cherry red color that I'm going to be doing my sentiment for the next card. And I do like to, if I'm going to do one, I might as well do two, because if I'm getting the machine out and heating it up, often I'll do a batch and then I've got some ready to go for my next projects. But the options really are endless nowadays because hot foiling has come such a long way. You can get sentiments and images and backgrounds. There's coordinating dyes. You can add color. You can blend over top. There is endless options. And how pretty is this red? I'm loving it. What I do love about this set is that it has a coordinating die. And I forgot to mention that you can get hot foil in so many different colors. And my final technique today is to create a die cut background. I've got these snowflakes here and I've cut them out of some pale blue cardstock. This panel I've also cut out of one of the design papers from the pack. Now I do want to pop these up. This is not for the faint-hearted. You definitely don't have to do this step, but because I am going to pop them up, I like to double my snowflakes up before I add the foam tape behind them. I am going to add this panel to the front of the card. This time I remembered not to put the panel onto the card front first because I do want to cut away the edges of the snowflakes, and it's much easier to do that before I actually add it to the front of the card. You can actually go to town with this technique. You can make backgrounds out of any kind of die cuts that you have, layered ones, even single ones. They don't have to be popped up. They can be directly onto the card front. And you can create any sort of pattern. You can do stripes on a diagonal. You can do them wide to thin. It's a really, really great way to get a unique background using the products that you have. So I am adhering my panel to the front of the card now that I've snipped away the edges of the snowflakes, and then all that's left to do is actually add the sentiment. And I am actually, because you know me, if you know me and you know I love dimension, I'm actually doubling this up and adding 2 layers of foam tape behind the sentiment. I did consider coming in with some sequins here, but I changed my mind and just kept it fairly simple. Is it simple? It is simple. Of course it's simple. It's a card I've made. And all together now I've got all of my cards and the ideas, starting with the design paper die cut card, and the sentiment here, it's hidden in the design paper. My next card has the cover die for the background, which gives lots of dimension and texture. And I've also added the sentiment with a die cut here. Then it was time to do some stenciling, and I took it up a notch and actually added some modeling paste or paste through the stencil to get that extra dimension. And here I've got the 3D embossing, but this one also had that layered stencil to create the image. And my final card here, which has the hot foiled sentiment and also the die cut background, which of course I took it to the next level and added dimension. You see the theme here, I'm sure you do. So don't forget to hang around. I've got a couple more videos lined up for you here, sharing my previous years from my Same But Different Christmas card series, and I look forward to seeing you there. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And say hello to my beautiful Lily. Hello Lily, aren't you gorgeous? Now she is the reason I have fur all through my foiling. But she doesn't mind. She's worth it. Till next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.